I'm recording because this is actually an interesting conversation, and
should I keep talking?
yeah,
I want it noted that you asked me to keep talking.
Yeah, no. So the issue of 5G is something that's been popping up at NECAPA stuff and planning conferences every once in a while. When I joined the Dover ZBA like 2 years ago, it was right after we had denied a monopole permit, and we found out in discovery that we were probably going to lose because if they had presented everything that they should have presented, we probably should have approved it. They just didn't, and they did a bad job, but it was still going to come out in the lawsuit on the appeal. And that was like 2 years ago, and I think we were using that case and that settlement as sort of a spur to look at and revisit everything that we had related to telecommunication stuff.
No kidding.
Because the question with 5G isn't where are you zoned for towers, it's getting into like the nitty gritty of what do you have in your right-of-way ordinance for what can go on your power lines or what have you, because it's a lot smaller and they can go in a lot more places. So if you're looking at how are we going to fill this gap, and if the most likely way that gap gets filled is 5G at this point, you might want to also start that conversation internally about, have we actually thought through everything as far as what 5G is going to look like in Somersworth, and whether we need to free up zoning, restrict zoning, look at our right-of-way ordinance to figure out how all of those pieces are going to go together, so that asking to fill this hole in coverage doesn't open up a whole can of worms that you didn't want.
James, I don't know what any of that means in English. All I know is I pick up my phone and wherever I am, it works. And I live in frickin' Nottingham and I have terrific cell phone service, and we don't have it on Clark Way off of Route 108. So if I translate all of that, does that mean that you and your group might be able to help with this subject matter, or do I call this guy and speak this language I don't understand, or should we talk offline?
I don't know what guy you're talking about. Are you talking about like the owner of the practice that you're working with?
Yes.
So I don't think it's connect me with them. I think all I'm suggesting is talk to Michelle and Bob about this situation that you've got going, and say, hey, if we're following this up to support this business, to support any of the other businesses on 108, this is likely going to involve 5G sooner or later.
Okay.
And we just thought it was worth checking in for what we've got related to 5G, and do we need to update our policies? Do we need somebody to take a look at them to see what the 5G build out is likely to look like under them? Just sort of, if you're encouraging filling that coverage, this might be your last chance to do that before people start trying to implement, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I just thought it was really interesting that Robin, brought it, not that it was, she brought up this problem with businesses, and I said, it is a problem. So I go upstairs to Stephanie, and we're, it's not Mark or Matt over in broadband, and we started talking about, whose purview is it? Who has this information? And then I sent on to Robin, NH Granite, because maybe that group has something. And I thought, how do we?
No one's
it's a big part of economic development.
Right.
How do we? Who is it that we're supposed to be talking to, and who can get some answers?
Right, that has been the hurdle now for 5 days. And again, you're talking where there's a surgical center, there's an enormous health club by any community in the country standards, and medical and doctors practices as well as manufacturers like Velcro, for example, all on this street, and no one has a problem. But the medical practices on this one street do not have services and are again.
Has this been all along for the past year and a half?
You're
Or
the
when
second.
did all of a sudden this pop up? Maybe that's my.
You're the second person who's asked. Who I'm working with and talking most directly to is a young dentist who just bought a 25-year-old practice. And I wonder, COVID coupled with this dentist stylistic approach to his practice, if now it brings the issue that was not surfaced to surface. So I guess the answer to your question is I don't really know. But I could ask him to be in touch with the previous dentist. My gut is the previous dentist didn't care if he had cell phone service. The practice wasn't as big. There wasn't an epidemic. You know what I mean?
They had a landline for the practice. They didn't need to worry about calling the people sitting in their car out front.
And plus, exactly. Plus, he had like 3 or 4 employees. This guy's got 14 employees and growing like crazy. But where my heart skips a beat is the neighbor. You know, what is next door? Is it the surgical center? Is it the Velcro? Why is this? Why? And I think it is interesting in terms of internal operational structure. Teresa, I so agree with you. There's no one to talk to. There's not a point person in charge. And you're saying peel it back, James, and come to my own community.
Well, I'm saying you probably want to talk with your own community in addition to solving this problem, to see if, you know, there are other things that you want to get done as part of this effort. I would almost wonder whether you're reaching out to the Utilities Commission and seeing if there's a path through that to, you know, directly to the service providers.
And yes, I'm on that. That is my new path. And to kind of sidebar, I'm very good friends with the guy who used to be the president and CEO of Verizon New Hampshire. Verizon has since reorganized and they no longer have a New Hampshire chapter. But he spent so much time. And Warren, you probably know Mike Hickey, right? So I reached out to Mike Hickey and asked him, who in Verizon do I talk to? Mike spent a lot of time in DC. Obviously, he was the CEO of New Hampshire, but there is no CEO of New Hampshire anymore. There's no New Hampshire office.
Doesn't New Hampshire, isn't Mark LaLiberty heading the broadband initiative in New Hampshire with
that's broadband, but that's not cell coverage.
That is not cell coverage, and it's,
you're right.
You know, it's a discussion that we're having, and Stephanie upstairs is same thing. Because they are doing broadband, they're getting a lot of towns calling them about cellular, and they're like, we're not working on cellular. So
The problem is that cellular is all private market driven.
Yes.
I mean, that's a big part of the problem. When I do have a position on Clark Way in Somersworth, and you know, Sprint, which doesn't go anywhere, I do get coverage outside of there. I know I do because I've gotten calls there. So one short-term thing you might suggest, Robin, is that they extend their Wi-Fi as far out to the parking lot as they can. Short-term. That's very short-term.
Yeah. Thank you. And you know, here I find most people have Verizon because initially Verizon was the only carrier that you could get out in the ocean. So if you were on the Great Bay or on the water, even shallow, like at the Orr House shallow water, not even on a boat, the only carrier you could have is Verizon. So I have found the Seacoast is dominated by Verizon, and try and find even a human being at Verizon, let alone, but I'm a woman with a mission. So if any of you have words of wisdom, I welcome them.
Yeah, no, definitely an interesting problem. And yeah, I'm sure we'd be interested to hear if you managed to get some resolution and how that worked out.
Okay, thank you.
To loop us back around to the agenda, then I'll take the last item first. Dover, and I saw Margaret just joined, the Dover Chamber is having their economic forecast next Tuesday. Brian Gottlob is going to be the speaker. And so we wanted, sort of like we did in December with the housing forecast, we wanted to check with all of you to see if there was a lot of interest in attending that. It does conflict exactly with the time of this call. So if a lot of people were interested in seeing Brian speak, we could cancel next week's call and circle back the week after.
I'll be on Brian's call.
I guess show of hands, people who would be interested in canceling. Show of hands, people who really want to have this call instead. All right, looks like we're going to cancel. I'll send a follow-up and I'll include the link to the registration for that if anybody needs it, just to remind people and connect you to that. Margaret, anything else you want to say about that?
If you're not a member, we would be happy to extend the member rate to anybody on this call. So if you have trouble registering, let me know. Go in and just don't pay, and we'll fix the fees afterwards. But if you run into any problems, just shoot me an email.
Great, thank you. All right, so then the other item on our agenda was circling back to the CEDR's funding proposal, and specifically the workforce development scope of that would be our project 2 for that proposal. We did manage to meet with the small working group, and we sat down with Christina Pappas, who is with Open the Door. That's a marketing firm, and she has been a consultant for SRPC for a project that we've been working on as well. So she was able to give us some general thoughts about how to approach the project, and some general pricing quotes that we could use for the purpose of putting a budget together. So I attached that with the meeting agenda and notes. And I think from here, it's really just fine tuning sort of an understood budget for the purpose of submission. I think there's probably room to be flexible with whatever we put in. It's just a matter of coming up with some assumptions for the sake of submittal. So Sean can't be with us this week. Warren, do you want to recap some of the other things that we talked about on Friday?
Sure. Yeah. So we had a great meeting. It was James, Christina Pappas, Sean, Nancy O'Connor, and Nancy Carmer. And so Open the Door, like James said, is a marketing firm that does, James, as he said, shared the information. We were thinking about a few different tracks on this, and she, I think, laid this out pretty well. We were talking about different industries and how we're going to discuss. So we're talking about hiring and retention, basically, and how to get the message out to small businesses. And some discussion ensued as to what is a small business. We've got standard SBA definitions of 500 and under 500 employees, but that's not really who we're getting this message out to. It's really smaller type businesses. So we spoke about different tracks. We spoke about the different industries. We mentioned manufacturing, hospitality, and there's also retail and the service industries. We wanted to get short, concise videos out there to the general market. So we spoke about methodology, how to do that, how to market that, and what type of social media we should use to do that. So Christina laid out her prices regarding price per video and what that includes, and then podcasts, which are a little less expensive because there's no video in the podcast, and then Facebook and Instagram reels. And I had a bunch of questions, and I wanted to open all this up to discussion regarding our budget, what we can achieve if we went with this. And James had mentioned we need to also go to two different sources, because two different marketing, additional marketing firms, because we're obligated to get at least three quotes. That's right, James?
That's SRPC's procurement requirement for this. For the budgeting standpoint, we think this would be enough to put a budget together and submit. It's once the funds would be awarded, then that we would officially need to procure the services. If Chris was interested in submitting her formal proposal, she's welcome to resubmit, and she would count as one, but we would need quotes from two others before we could make a decision.
And I think Chris did a nice job in opening the door for us to have this conversation and just get an idea as to what the cost might be. But we're certainly under no obligation to go with her in the end. And she realizes that. She's very professional. She does work nationally and a lot of work down in Boston. This is everybody was sent her proposal. So I guess we wanted to have a discussion around what our ask is as part of the budget, and to sort of review this proposal a little bit. And I don't know if you have anything to add to this, James. I don't think Nancy Carmer is at this meeting today, but I don't know if Nancy O'Connor or James, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, so I think in an ideal scenario, we might have had another day or two to take those materials that we got back from her and actually sift through and put together, all right, here's what we'd like to go on for the sake of assumptions. Here's how many videos or how many Facebook reels, and give the group something to react to. And we just didn't have time to do that. And that's not Chris's fault. She actually turned this around basically in one business day from when we talked. So she was very timely, and we're grateful to her for that. So I guess some of that is sort of an open question too, as to whether we feel like we can put something together for the sake of budgeting today that the group feels comfortable with us just going ahead and submitting, or whether that's something to check back in on. We as the working group should go and do that budget and come back, and then we'll talk about it. I'm not sure. So I guess initial thoughts, comments, reactions to what we've been able to provide so far.
But I have a question. Just a follow-up question, James, and maybe others have as well. Is it sufficient just to submit this as it is, or do we need a specific budget line for this? In other words, I think we decided on $25,000 for the infrastructure SRPC to be leading this, and then do we need a specific line item for a budget to go in and then ask for X amount of dollars altogether?
So
initially,
what I have assumed that we should be providing, we will need to give BEA an amount that we are requesting for this project. And that amount does not necessarily have to be exactly how the funds ultimately get spent, but what I assumed we would need to provide is an assumption to BEA. We are asking for 15,000, and for the sake of what we're presenting you, we have these cost estimates from a consultant, and we have based a budget for that 15,000 that would give us, for example, 4 videos at $2,500 per video, 100 hours at $65 an hour for this consultation on strategy, 2 months of active Facebook monitoring at the $250 per month that she quoted us, et cetera, so that we build that up to the total amount that we're requesting. We shouldn't just be saying, we want $10,000 and here's a general menu of services that we might use that 10,000 for. I think we need to provide assumptions about how it's going to work.
Correct.
Thank you.
Can I
Nancy?
ask just a quick question? Because I know we had talked about maybe 4 to 6 videos to be able to reach different audiences and how things resonate differently with, different industries. Do you think, I can't really tell from her menu, but do you think that, does it say how long a $2,500 video is? And is that something that could be then broken into like sound bites? Or is that $2,500 per, because we talked also about doing very, very short little sort of just catchy pieces, not like a half-hour video or something. So I'm just wondering whether that's like breakable or whether that's for each small video.
Yeah, I don't think we know the answer to that, what the length of those videos are. We had said 5 to 10 minutes, I believe, James. But I don't know if that $2,500 per video can be up to more intensive training of, let's say, half an hour. I don't think we know the answer to that. That's our great question.
I don't have that that answer for certain.
Probably just a quick, easy follow-up question to her.
Yeah, and I think she was sort of suggesting the podcast or audio track, even overlaid with some images potentially as the alternative to doing the live video that was potentially cheaper. It's the Facebook or Instagram reel that I think was sort of confusing me a little bit as to whether that was intended to be equivalent to the 2 things above as well, because that is significantly cheaper. And we had talked about a couple of potentially different videos or different materials depending on the purpose. And we were sort of thinking of this as when we're thinking about generally what the consultant will be working on Friday, we sort of talked about it broken into 3 I don't know, tasks or categories of how those might be grouped, where we were thinking about sort of production of the soundbite level assets that would be sort of making the case to businesses for why you need to make a change, why you should approach hiring or retention differently under this economy and under these circumstances. And then sort of the second step being, assuming we've made the case to you or assuming you're already on board, here's how to access all of the materials that can help you make that change. And then sort of the third category of things would be general consultation on strategy of what audiences are we trying to reach, how are we going to effectively distribute these assets to meet those audiences, et cetera.
I think the Facebook reels, if you look at the price, because you had brought that up, James, it's for 30 to 50 second time frame, and I think the Facebook video is aimed to create interest around our long videos and our longer podcasts. So that's more of a marketing piece to get people interested. So any comments or any questions from anybody, any suggestions on how we move to the next step? I think we'll give you guys
So,
a minute to make sure you read it. You're able to digest this if you have it open.
so again, I think there are two ways to do that. One would be if we set a dollar amount of, yeah, if this project is $15,000 and you make a budget that works for that, and want to go ahead and submit, that's something that we can do. Or if you want us to come back and present something to react to that is, here is what we think collectively should go into a campaign, and we flex the budget up or down based on what needs to go into that, I think we would probably need a little bit more work time offline to bring that.
I think there are some other options as well. Some of this we could potentially do ourselves. Maybe we don't need Facebook, Instagram Reels, and maybe we can, because I'm doing some quick math now. If we get four videos and we get 2 podcasts, we're up to 13.5, right? So, and I think we need ongoing support for strategy. So I think we need to leave some room there moving forward. But maybe there are some things we can do by ourselves. Sean, who is not here, he's skiing today on a 0-degree day. He has done some. They've done some successful in-house videos. Certainly, maybe we pick and choose what we do in order to get the most out of Open the Door or the marketing company that we choose, professionalism, and we pick and choose what we're able to do in-house if we can do something in-house.
Yeah, and I would also just kind of add on to that, because the workforce development piece was a priority action item that came out of our recent CEDs, we've also taken a portion of our annual planning dollars and said that we'll invest some time towards workforce development initiatives this year. And so that's Nancy's item. And so the things that kind of fall within our wheelhouse universe, we can also put some time towards. So whether it's some of the research that goes into the work, or whatnot, and that could potentially help offset, again, some of the costs, so we can really focus consulting dollars to where they'll have the most bang for their buck.
So what does the group feel is really important within this? I think the goal is to get some videos out there, hopefully some podcasts as well. I'm not sure how important that is, but I think getting it in multiple media types of delivery, I think, is important. Therefore, I feel that they're both kind of important. But as far as, talk about those top 2 if you agree or disagree with me. But how about everything else? I look at best practice case studies. That's relatively inexpensive on an hourly basis. But I think we have a lot of that information, quite frankly. We have the information. We haven't developed the templates. And we haven't packaged it, of course. So I think understanding what we need out of an external resource, I think, is really important. Then we can come up with a budget.
I mean, also in that case, we could have her or whoever do create the template, and then we can do the follow-up work.
Right.
To be able to.
So I'm going to throw out there, a discussion around 4 videos and 2 podcasts. That's already up to 13.5 in this budget. And, you know, I think we might be able to get better pricing than this, but this is what we have. That, you know, I'd like to start presenting something already, because to BEA for this spend, because, you know, it's getting, as spring comes on, and which is, you know, going to happen sooner than later. Days are getting longer already. I feel that this problem certainly isn't going away, and I think we want to be thought leaders around this. So, you know, I don't know. Is anybody awake?
Warren, would it be a good idea to reach out to Chris and ask her what she thinks is the best approach? Not to give us like a menu of prices, but say, what do you like? Do you think that social media, combination of social media videos and this many regular videos and maybe a podcast, like what does she think? Because I know that she has some experience with small businesses, so I think that her opinion is valuable.
Yep. I mean, do you feel that we want to go in to her and say we have a $15,000 budget? What do you feel? You know, she
Yeah,
kind
I
of
was
put this.
thinking that exactly.
I really.
I mean,
like
she put
that.
this on us because we asked her to, so
Yeah.
she did fine.
I think I've worked with her a fair amount myself, and I think I didn't think of it, Natalie. I think it's a great suggestion. I think she has so much integrity. She'll be very honest, and she's quite accustomed to working with municipalities and small businesses too. So I think that's a great suggestion. I would respect her opinion with the resources that we have.
I was going to add the observation that I think the earlier observation that the Facebook, Instagram Reels are kind of feeders to the podcast and the videos. So if you're, you know, throwing out there four videos for a podcast, I think you need topic items so you know what those are going to be directed to, and maybe it ends up being 2 videos and 6 podcasts, you know, depending upon the task or the targeted audience that you're looking at, and that's where that dialogue with the consultant may help to refine that, and that will then refine your budget. The only other observation I was going to make is, yeah, I think we can be a lot of different resources to minimize the cost of the consulting element, but I would also caution that you want this to be very or be conscious of the branding and that it be consistent materials and that it's not disjointed. It seems like a haphazard effort. So I think it's important to feed that through one person, but we can minimize that person's time by feeding them the information that needs to go into the copy.
Well said, Paul. I think consistent branding is of utmost importance in this, because that's going to drive everything. That's going to drive our message. That's going to drive getting people and them feeling comfortable with the information that we're providing.
It goes to our credibility. If it looks sloppy, it will be perceived as sloppy. So we're here to help, but we want to make sure that they understand that we're committed to being a professional help organization.
Okay, so I guess the question I have for everyone, just kind of in the interest of time and moving an application forward to BEA, in terms of kind of, we've got a general scope, it sounds like, that we've all agreed to. Do we collectively as a group need to bless the final budget and final application before we submit? Or can we work with Warren and Sean and the team to kind of finalize those details behind the scenes and kind of get things moving forward to BEA? See, Teresa is thumbs up to the latter. Yes, Shanna as well. Okay.
Ben too.
All right. So we'll kind of, awesome, thank you. Seen several other thumbs up. So rather than continue to budget by committee consensus, we will push it forward and get that proposal all wrapped up and shiny with a bow. Teresa, more just a question, curiosity. Did you find out if the contracts do need to go to GNC or not?
Sorry, I wasn't sure which Teresa. On my screen, Teresa and I are side by side.
You
So
are
I'm like-
side by side. I should have specified, sorry.
Yes, it actually does. So
That's what I
you
was-
were right. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
okay.
they, Tina feels that because it's already been through like the first part of
Yep.
it, that
Sure.
it won't be delayed. It'll be pretty quick, but yes, it does have to go.
It still has, yeah, it needs time to wend its way
Mhm.
through all the approvals.
So if you can get it in now.
Yep.
It'll go on I think they're meeting February 9th or so. Well, we'll look at the schedule and make sure. I'm sure you have those schedules so you can see when it needs to be submitted so that we can get it over to them. It's not going to take long internally for us to.
Okay, so
to
do you
move
have
it
a
forward.
contract template already worked up? Because that's the piece that you're gonna need. So we'll send you an application, you'll send us back a contract, and we can chat afterwards offline.
Yes, and I would say, Jen, send that through. I know. Send that one through to Tina.
You're gonna need probably you're probably gonna need your own contract template. And I'll actually point to Stephanie on the call, who's quite familiar with doing the contracts with us for targeted block grant, so may have something that you can work with.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, we'll coordinate that in. I'll loop Tina in. I'm on the front end, and I think that's Tina's area where she has to do all of that. But
Stuff.
I will mention it to her, and we'll get her done.
All right.
So I just want to bring up, I just want to ask the general group what kind of flexibility we have with this. Do we have a dollar amount we want to stay within? Do we want to leave some money on the table still? So, can we spend the full 25? Do we want to only spend 15? We need some guidance, or is it up to us?
I guess my thought is, and I know that you are, I'm preaching to the choir, but if you work closely with Christina and get her recommendations and advice, it probably would be smart for us to stay in the range of 15. We don't know what turns this pandemic is going to take and how it affects business and where we are in the future. And there might be something that comes up that even if we had a nominal amount that had to be matched by a local corporation or something, we'd be happy. I'm just a little nervous about spending it all on a pilot project that's been untested and unproven in this uncertain time.
From my perspective, I would say reserve some back. We know that the housing assessment is still to come. We know that Noah and Stephanie's group is working on toolboxes to assist, resources, information. There's so much the workforce development initiative happening at the state level that they're hoping to engage with the CEDR and be able to have you drive that into the local. So I think you want to reserve some to say, okay, we've got this stuff from the state and they'd like us to do it. Now we can use our CEDR monies that'll help us, do that. That was my thought. I would reserve some money.
And probably bare minimum to be effective at implementing something else like that is ballpark 5,000 plus, 5,000, 7,000. So, I'm just looking at, I did reply to Chris's email and ask her for recommendations about sort of the hourly tasks, because those were a little harder for me to understand. And just going with the upper range of what she recommended for those items, that's already 6,600 in terms of consulting on strategy, some of the best practice case study sort of things. So I think just the assets, we're probably going to need to be a little bit careful because this could balloon a little bit quickly. So maybe be very targeted in terms of what we're thinking we want to frame this around.
Did you say that, James, you just sent her an email just now?
No, that was in the conversation that I had with her yesterday. So
Okay.
the hour ranges that she recommended for the hourly tasks, that was something I pasted into the body of my email with the agenda at the end of the day yesterday. But it sounds like we have our marching orders and we have a general understanding of how we're going to approach this. So unless there's anything else on this one that you want to talk about as a group, we can circle back and try and get the working group together at some point this week, maybe, to fine tune this.
Thank you, Warren, and the group. I think this will be very useful and very shareable.
So do we have, is it understood that we do have permission before, we're not meeting for another 2 weeks now as a big group. Do we have permission from the group to submit this, or do you want one final look-see? I don't think there's any definitive, anything to, you guys said, yes, work on it, deal with Chris, but do we want to submit before our next meeting, or do?
That's my understanding of what the thumbs up were. But if somebody had a different understanding, please speak now.
I just want to be clear, that's all.
That sounds right.
Okay, good.
Okay, Robin, were you going to say something else?
No, I was going to agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't mean to be exhaustively reiterative, but it's important that we know what we're doing.
Yep. So we can follow up offline. If people think of anything else or have questions, absolutely feel free to send them along. And we will move forward. So we talked about this. We talked about canceling next week for the Dover event. We spent a while talking about cell coverage with Robin. Anything else for the group?
Yes,
Teresa?
I have a couple of housekeeping. So,
Oh, both Teresas have things.
oh, hey, I have
Teresa
a couple.
Pinto, go first.
Thank you. I have a couple housekeeping. So Mikhail Pirtle is going to be joining. He's first day here at BEA as the Seacoast Regional Business Resource Center Specialist. Will be Friday. He will be now in. Several of you have set up meetings with him. So I will be, you'll be getting a reminder on those meetings. Thank you for that. And his email is now active, and I'm going to try and get everything done so it's a smooth transition. So he'll be starting to attend the meetings, and by everything going well, I will phase out by the end of February. But I'm always open to attend as schedule allows, or if you need anything, just giving him time to get familiar with the area and everything and all the services. So I'm still available to assist. And then new face for some of you is Stephanie, and I'll let her introduce herself and why. There she is, she's waving, why she has come on board to the CEDR. James and everyone, she graciously raised her hand, and this was our commissioner. It was a thought Stephanie and I had, and we are very happy that our commissioner is fully supportive and wanted to see this type of collaboration. So Stephanie, who are you? What do you do?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for letting me stick my nose in. I'm Stephanie Verdial. I am a principal planner with the Office of Planning and Development. I'm at the old OSI, which was the old OEP, which was the old OSP. We moved into BEA this fall based on the budget that was signed in July. So as we're kind of fitting into the BEA family. Obviously, the economic development portion is huge, and it is things that I work with the RPCs. As the town planner in Pembroke, I did sit on the Central and Southern Cedar a few years ago. So just kind of bringing another, another body into the mix, that with resources and with other experiences that I've had, with the support of the commissioner, to bring the planning and zoning ingredient into the mix is what I'm here to do. And I'm looking forward to it and glad to be working with all of you.
Happy to have you.
Thank you.
Teresa, was that everything?
That was it. I mean, Stephanie and I are already working with what is it? The Greenway,
The Greenway.
the
Mhm.
Seacoast
Okay.
Greenway. We have that project. So we have several projects that we're actually working on together throughout the state. So I just encourage everyone, instead of, you can go and you can continue to come to me, or now you have Stephanie you have a direct connect. So utilize that, and we're trying to open our channels of direct contacts for all of you to help.
And I'll continue to run to Teresa for for tutorials.
And Teresa Walker?
I was just going to share that the RADC, the Regional Economic Development Center, Southern New Hampshire, announced today the merger with the Coastal Economic Development Center. So that's been in the works for a long time. But finally today, Laurel's given the green light to share that with you guys. So RADC is acquiring all of CEDC's loans and other assets. Dan Gray's moved over to RADC. So it just really strengthens the region from an economic development scenario to have that two groups come together, where there was always a lot of overlap and cooperation anyway. But that's official today. And the two boards of directors the boards of directors for both organizations have been working on this for a long time. So I'm psyched to share it with you.
Great, congratulations. All right, anything else for the good of the order? Warren?
Quick question for Teresa. Has the last Gopher funding grant, have they all been released? Have all those funds been released? In other words, I have clients that have not received anything. Might they still be in a queue for grant funding?
Which are you referring to?
That last one, the deadline was in October, and then they kept on pushing out the grant awards, and then the grant awards came through the beginning of December. But I don't know if they were all.
So it's been closed. They've reviewed them. The businesses that submitted the system, they've pushed out the notifications of all the ones that they are reviewing. So they expect to have the notifications of all the applications that were submitted and reviewed, and what the award amount will be finished up by the end of this month. So there are some businesses that are still receiving their notification. Should be done by the end of this month. That is not receiving the monies, that is notification of what will be awarded.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And don't forget the emergency equipment one for our towns, municipalities.
Other comments, questions? I know Robin always likes to remind her businesses, probably a month ago, but continuing through, the deadline for ERZ submittals for expenses you incurred last year is in a month. I think it's February 10th. So if you're working with people that applies to, that's coming up. If there's nothing else, everybody have a great 2 weeks. Yeah. Thank you all.
Thank you. Have a good day.